Welcome to the most important week of the year for the podcast industry. Welcome to Podcast Movement 2025.
Hi everyone and welcome. So today we are diving into how you can track your podcast charts in real time and for free. We'll show you how to monitor your rankings on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and stay ahead of the game. But let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Han, CMO at Ausha. And as you can probably hear, I come with a French accent. That's part of today's international flavor. And you know what? I'm actually flying back to Paris this afternoon. Also, I spent over 15 years in international marketing. I started my career in L'Oreal in the beauty industry. And for the past 5 years, I've been working in tech. And before joining Ausha, I was a podcaster myself. I was also a client of the platform. So what is Ausha for those who don't know yet? Well, it's the first platform designed to go beyond podcast launch, built to truly grow your audience with powerful marketing tools tailored for podcasting. And we offer 5 key tools to add to your stack to help you grow your audience, with hosting and distribution, AI for episode publishing, free charts tracking. We also have Ausha Pro, a branch dedicated for media groups, networks, and podcast agencies. And finally, we have podcast SEO, which is really the hottest trend in the US right now, and also one of our most in-demand tools to get discovered. We're currently working with over 20,000 podcasts worldwide, and the feedback have been excellent so far. And one of the things our community loves about us is our deep expertise in podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And today, I'm here to share some of that with you. So let's dive in. So did you know what most podcast listeners do when they're looking for new shows? According to the Podcast Discovery Stats study, which surveyed podcast listeners on how they discover new content to consume, it turns out that 1 in 2 discover podcasts directly on listening apps like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So let's take a closer look at this. Let's open Apple Podcasts. And just so you know, Spotify is very similar. And here, there are 4 key interfaces accessible through the menu. First, you have the homepage, fully curated by the teams. According to the study, though, only 6% of podcast listeners check the app's editorial recommendations. Next is the Browse section, where you find a mix of curated content and top podcast charts, along with the option to browse by category and subcategory. And here the study shows that 24% of listeners browse these charts. Then there's the personal library, where the app users store the podcast they follow, so not much action here. And last, but far from least, is the search feature. Here, listeners type in keywords to find new content. For example, if I'm looking for content on the history of cowboys, I type cowboys or cowboys history and get a list of shows and episodes. 70% of listeners use the search features to discover new podcasts. So here, if you take a step back, as you can see, to efficiently boost your visibility on podcast apps, it's crucial to focus your efforts on these 2 sections, so the search and charts. About the search, yesterday I gave already an in-depth session. So you might be able to find the replays, or you can also get the one from Courtney just earlier. Like, she's doing great about that as well. And you get more information about the PSO strategy. But today, we'll be focusing on charts. So first thing first, what are charts exactly? So charts are simply a list of the top 50 to 200 podcasts ranked by popularity metrics as defined by the podcast app and updated several times a day. There are quite a few different charts available, so chart by category, subcategory, episode charts, show charts, and editorial charts curated by Apple and Spotify team. With all of this in mind, it's important to note that Apple Podcasts has over 100 of charts, and there are around 75 on Spotify. All of that multiplied by 175 countries, so it makes more than 17,000 charts to track. So quite a few, right? Well, to check if you appear in the charts, you could simply open Apple and Spotify and scroll through each chart. But as I mentioned, if you have time to scroll over like 17,000 charts out there that are also updating several times a day, well, come on, how can you track where your podcast stands and have an idea of all your visibility without losing your mind? Well, so here is my gift for you, or should I say for your sanity. So we just launched Ausha Charts, a free tool to help you easily track your podcast rankings across all charts. With it, you can track your Apple and Spotify rankings across all charts, all country with full ranking history. See also how your competitors are ranking too. And you can also get notified when your rank changes or when a new review drops. And the best part, it's all free and it will stay free. So would you like a live demo of the tool? Yeah? Okay. So give me a few seconds to set things up. Here. That was quick. So, all right. Welcome to Ausha Charts. So before landing on this dashboard, you have to know that I already set up a podcast just to save us a bit of time today. But don't worry, the process of signing in is super quick. And quick heads up before we start, I chose the show TED Talks Daily for this demo, but because I love TED Talks, I couldn't resist. But that said, the real reason is that because it's available on both Apple and Spotify and it ranks in enough charts to properly showcase the tool. So we have no affiliation and partnership, but we are just using the public chart data to illustrate how a podcast perform on the charts. So once you've signed up and set up for your show, you'll land on this first screen, the overview. So it's a clean summary of your podcast key chart data. And we'd like to welcome you first with good news. So you see first here your best ranking ever. So this is the highest position your podcast has ever reached in a chart. And of course, we show you exactly where, on which chart, which platform, and in which country. Then we also display like the best progress ever. This is the biggest leap your podcast has made in a chart. Again, fully detailed with the chart, platform, country, and the evolution. So if you want to know more about one of these charts, you can just click on them. And as you can see, the graph below instantly updates to show the full ranking history of that chart. And specifically for the chart you were looking at, over the time period that you selected. So personally, when I'm analyzing some data, I like to zoom out a bit. So let's switch to 30 days. As you can see, the graph adjusts to your selection. But of course, you can play with the filter and even further explore, your results. So we can, for example, switch for Spotify. Let's look at the results on the United States and choose a category where your podcast has ever appeared. And based on your filters, you see the graph updates automatically, but also the 4 KPIs below adapt themselves. So you can see your best ranking on that filters based on the selected filters and the time frame. You can see also your current position today, your 7-day average rank, along with how it evolved compared to the previous 7 days, and the same logic for the 30-day average. And below, you can see, you can find all the recap of your rankings across all charts, all countries, for both Apple and Spotify. You can interact with the table, like you can sort the data as you want. And if you get curious about, the historic data of a specific chart, you can just click on this little icon, and it will instantly show the chart full history in the graph above. And let's say that you want to see who else is showing up in this chart. So just click on the chart name itself, and it will take you straight to the Explore tab right here. So this is a different tab where you can see the full list of shows ranking there. Of course, the Wi-Fi of the event not being stable, my worst nightmare just happened, right? I don't know if someone can come out on stage and just pinch me. Oh, no, that's fine. I'm relieved. Thank you for your support. So now you can see the list of all the shows ranking in that chart. You can easily find yourself, with the display of the label you. But in the Explore tab, what it can be fun, is not only you can see your ranking, but you have all this information in the overview. It's like you can explore like many charts as you want, you know, and you can also, let's say, check in on your competitor, like look for your podcast nemesis, let's say. So for the sake of this demo, let's imagine that This American Life might be the one that TED Talks is aiming to outrank. So you just click on the name of your competitor's podcast, and well, you will see the same data as you saw for your own show, and you can navigate it on it in the same way. So that is for the chart section. Another part that you might find interesting is the ratings section, which gives you a different kind of insight about your podcast performance. Here you get a full summary of all your Apple Podcast reviews, aggregated across every country store. Let me tell you that it's quite hard to find this data, because even Apple Podcast Connect only shows reviews by country and not globally. But still, if you want to filter on a country, to zoom in a country, let's have a look on the USA, then you can just filter here. Also, you can see like the details of the review here, and you can sort them out like from the newest to the oldest, oldest to the newest. And one of my favorites is to sort things out from the lowest rates. So you have to be in a good headspace for that one. But I think it's a good way to get constructive feedbacks among trolls in order to improve your content. Now let me finish with a last nice touch, the reports. So here, you can set up email notifications to stay updated on two things. First, the chart alerts, to get notified when your podcast moves in the rankings at the frequency you choose, so daily, weekly, every 2 weeks, or none. You also get the review alerts to get an email every time a new Apple Podcast review drops. And to wrap it up, let me quickly show you maybe what those emails look like, because they're really clean, simple, and super easy to read. Okay, so like I mentioned, those notification emails are really clear and pleasant to read, which matters, you know, when it's something that you get regularly. So that is for the demo. I hope this gave you a good sense of what Ausha Charts can do, and maybe even made you want to try it by yourself. So now that you're geared up to track your position, how can you improve it? First, I want to correct a common misconception, because charts don't only rely on downloads. That's simply not true. And according to Apple, charts are not based on all-time downloads or listening records. Another thing I often hear is that charts are based on ratings, reviews, or shares. But that's also false. Apple clearly states that these factors are not considered in the chart ranking. The bad news is the reality is much more complex than that, because each type of chart uses different metrics and has its own refresh rate and measurement time frame. For example, some charts measure freshness, tracking results within a single day, while others have longer time frames. So to keep it simple, I've listed here the main metrics most charts consider and the ones you should focus on. So you have you should focus on raising the unique daily streams, the listenings, not the downloads, the number of unique listeners on that day, the new follows, and the completion rates. And I indicated here on which platform it impacts the most. And talking about impact, when you want to increase these metrics, well, the goal is clear, right? Because on one hand, it means that you have to attract more new listeners, and the other hand, it means that you need to create great content to keep them engaged. But that's the end goal of podcasting, right? It means that when you arrive on charts, you already reach a certain level of success, but you need to get there first. And to make it to the chart, you can't skip the work. The results come from consistent effort and a solid podcast marketing strategy. And within podcast apps, Well, there are another powerful lever, your visibility in search. And it is also if you're launching a podcast like recently, or if you're, let's say, like struggling in getting an audience, well, this is a place where not only the popular podcast can rank up, but you can do as well if you do like smart things enough. Because search is the most used interface by potential listeners, but it's also the one where you have the most actionable opportunities to impact directly and very quickly. So how do you get visible in the search section? Where that's where the PSO comes in, the podcast search optimization, or AKA the SEO of podcast. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, I won't have time to cover the full strategy today because I did yesterday. Podmove announced that all the sessions are recorded and will be shared online, so feel free to check them out. But just to give you some quick answer and beginning of an answer, because I don't want to leave you frustrated, you need to start by auditing where you stand when a podcast listener type in a keyword related to your content. For your info, you can easily check if your podcast appear and see your ranking on any keywords with no endless scrolling to find out like which ranking are you. If you're like 75, 75th, it's going to be a hell, right? So you can do that easily at our Podwa station at our booth right there. It's free and instant, so do not hesitate. And when you use the Podwa station, just for your info, we'll send you afterwards a free guide by email to help you create your PSO strategy. But if you'd rather dive in and try the tool yourself on your show, well, feel free to do so. So you can try it free for 7 days, and then the first plan starts at $59 per month. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. Paula, I don't know if you still have a few minutes to take some questions, yeah? So we'll be passing around the microphone if you have questions. Everything? Yes. Hi, Pascal. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you. I have a question. So I'm in pre-production. I'm launching in the fall my first podcast.
So there's. Can we put like the sound loud? I cannot hear.
Oh, you can't hear.
I cannot hear Pascal. Pauline, can we raise the volume? Thank you so much.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So hi, everyone. My name is Pasca. I am in pre-production for my first podcast show.
Congrats.
It's called Life of a Servant, and I interview faith leaders across the globe, so Europe, Africa, America, and things of that nature. So I currently have 9 episodes that are in pre-production and ready to go. So I'm launching season 1 here in the next couple of months.
Great. Welcome in the podcasting industry.
Thank you so much. I've had the greatest time in Ausha and what you guys are doing. One of the tables that I stopped at yesterday, and they were the nicest human beings, and they were just so helpful.
Thank you so much.
My question is around, if I am in pre-production, this is my first show, so I'm not going to be showing up on Ausha. How do I optimize, other than titles, right, for those first 9 episodes to do the best that they can without having that historical data?
Okay, so there are many things. First of all, just to precise the goal is not to appear on Ausha. We are a tool to help you out to appear into Apple Podcasts and Spotify where the listeners are. And the second thing is, so we have 2 things. When we're talking about the top charts, it means that you need to have as much as listeners as you can and new followers as you can. Right, but when we're talking about the search, and if you want to appear, in front of potential listeners, what you have to do is for every new episode, you need to work properly all your title, description, all your metadata from your channel, show, and every episode, in order to make sure you get all the keywords your potential listeners might type in to find like content related to yours.
Something that you brought up that was super cool.
Yeah?
Could you really break down top charts versus what you're saying and the ranking?
What do you mean by that?
Because you said there's a difference between top charts and ranking. Could you tell me the difference?
Yeah, okay, no worries. We are going back to this because it's as simple as within Apple Podcasts and Spotify, there are 2 different things. And and listeners, they're like 24% of them will discover like new content from charts, which are only like the top charts rankings, okay? But when they're looking for specific content, then yeah, I don't know what is your podcast about.
It's religion, faith, and spirituality.
Okay, let's say that they are looking for a content about spirituality, you know, then they will go in the search bar. 70% of them will go into the search bar, look for content about spirituality, and your show will rank up. So they might not, you know, that they were not aware about your show, but they will discover it thanks to that.
Okay, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Paula, do we still have some time? Do we have another question? 5 seconds. Okay. So I'm going to use it to say a proper goodbye. So thank you all for attending this session, and a special thanks to those who joined both of my talks, because I see some familiar faces. I have to say that I really enjoyed this edition of PodMove, always full of great conversation and connection. So if you'd like to keep learning with us, Ausha offers plenty of educational content. So my team and I also host monthly webinars where we share our expertise. We often bring in amazing guests from YouTube, Amazon, BBC, and so on. So you'll find all the details on ausha.co. And of course, do not hesitate to stop by our booth and say hi. Thank you. Have a great day.